Welcome back to State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. We got a lot of fun stuff to talk about today. Jared McCain has looked like a great rookie for the Philadelphia 76ers, and that's a team that hasn't had a lot of bright spots to start off the year. Elfrid Payton has returned to the NBA, and he looks amazing. It looks like he has been deserving of a spot in the league all along, even when he was gone from it. And he just had 21 assists last night. He has been great for the New Orleans Pelicans, a team that has really needed a point guard in the absence of DeJounte Murray to start the season, and a lot more on today's episode of State of the Association. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. The biggest knock on the Pelicans the last few seasons has been that they could really use a proper point guard. CJ McCollum has fit in nicely to be kind of more of a combo guard for them and be more of a facilitator than he was over in Portland. But they could have really used a point guard that would have really helped elevate the game of guys like Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, offensive studs, especially for a guy like Zion Williamson. They aren't that adept at creating their own shot. Brandon Ingram's kind of another story, but Zion, he's really athletic. He can be a great lob threat, and he can be point Zion at times. But in general, it's having a proper point guard that's definitely going to help. They went out and they got DeJounte Murray in the offseason, and that is probably going to be a really big piece for them. Played one game this season, and part of that is definitely due to factors that are outside of his control, so that is not any flack on DeJounte Murray whatsoever. Who has stepped in as of late for the New Orleans Pelicans after being gone from the NBA entirely is Elfrid Payton. Payton has looked like the facilitator that this team really needed. He had 21 assists that you don't even see at times throughout a whole season for elite point guards. And Elfrid Payton was a guy who was out of the league just a week ago. Now he's giving you 21 assists. And they weren't just easy assists. At times, these were really smart plays by Elfrid Payton. Tell one man to drive, if that guy doesn't get open, he's got someone coming around him from behind the back. He hands it off to him. The pass itself might be easy. Having the vision for that and not forcing that pass on the drive, that's really impressive, and that comes with experience. And it shows the value and IQ for the game that Elfrid Payton has really developed. Some lobs too, and of course Zion has once again dealt with injuries. That's always been the case with Zion Williamson. That's always been the knock on his career. Not that he's not talented as a player. He's uber talented, super athletic, super high ceiling. But the knock has been he just can't stay healthy. And that's been the case once again this year. However, if you get Zion back in that lineup and you get Elfrid Payton throwing lobs to Zion Williamson, it's a recipe for success. And I believe that Elfrid Payton could absolutely fit onto this team as a real proper rotational player, even when DeJounte Murray comes back. DeJounte is, of course, going to be a starting point guard on this team. Then you got CJ at the 2, B.I., Zion. Center position's a little dicey, Daniel Tyson all. But at the end of the day, that's a very talented starting 5. So Elfrid Payton's going to have to come off the bench. And I think he can be valuable in that as well. You've got young guys like Trey Murphy, like Herb Jones on that second unit. I'm sticking with the offensive end here, talking about Trey Murphy in particular. He is both a great shooter and a very athletic player. He could pass for the dunk contest and the three-point contest. Have a super talented offensive player off the bench like that who has all the athleticism, all the talent in the world, to have a great facilitator on the team with him and Elfrid Payton now. That's going to be huge for Trey Murphy and his development as a player, because this is someone who's still very young, still has a lot of room to grow in the league, and he just has to have the right opportunities. And I think Elfrid Payton can really enhance those opportunities and take Trey Murphy's game to the next level. And then, of course, there's that defensive end with Elfrid Payton, which is perhaps the best part of his game entirely. Because Elfrid Payton, when he got out of the league, the knock on him, it wasn't his defense. It was absolutely his offense. He was not seen as a sufficient offensive player. As a result, it really harmed his overall impact because he was always a very good defender, especially at the point guard position, a position where defense can often be lacking. You look at offensive superstars at the point guard position in the league today, aside from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, most of them do not put any emphasis on their defense whatsoever. But Elfrid Payton was different, and he wasn't the offensive superstar, and that's what took him out of the league. But his defense was always on point. He was always one of the better defenders at the point guard position. That benefits the Pelicans in both right now, when you can trust Elfrid Payton in the starting lineup, but also when he goes to that second unit. I'll talk about the starting lineup first, but Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, when healthy, those are not really plus defenders. Same thing with CJ McCollum especially. Dejounte Murray, that's a little bit more alright. We didn't really see that in Atlanta, but that was also more so because he was relegated to more of an offensive role on that team. And that was really to his detriment on the defensive end. But Elfrid Payton, to be able to come in on that starting lineup, he's immediately probably the best defender. At least on the perimeters, it's him and Dejounte, and then it's everyone else just multiple tiers below. He comes into the starting lineup, he can instantly be a great defender for this Pelicans team, be one of the best defenders on the team, especially on that starting five. I think that's always been, of course, the best part of his game. And while we're really seeing what he can do on the offensive end for the Pelicans right now, that defensive upside is even greater for Elfrid Payton. Off the bench too, because that's where he's most likely going to be when Dejounte Murray comes back. He's got a world of upside on the defensive end there too, and it's a little bit different compared to the starting lineup. That's why it's worth making two major points about it, because on that starting lineup there's a lack of really solid defenders, but on that defensive end you've got Herb Jones, you've got Trey Murphy. We're already great in the case of Herb Jones to really good defenders in their own right in the case of Trey Murphy, and you add in Elfrid Payton to that that's a great defensive unit off of your bench. That I think can be lost a lot of times is that the second unit in itself is not entirely different from the first unit in the sense of starters aren't always going to be playing with the full-time starters, and bench players aren't always going to be playing with the full-time bench players. You're going to have mixes in there. So if Zion Williamson continues to play and he comes in and he's still playing while a guy like Trey Murphy, while a guy like Herb Jones, while a guy like Elfrid Payton, they come into the lineup and Zion Williamson has still been out there, he's not been subbed out yet, then they can make up for Zion Williamson's lack of defensive potential, lack of defensive effort, lack of just overall defensive upside, and they can fill in for him. But by themselves, that is a lethal defensive three. Herb Jones, one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire league. Elfrid Payton, that was always his bread and butter, was that perimeter defense. And Trey Murphy is a very good defender in his own right. That is a great defensive unit off the bench. That's probably what I'm most excited for with this Pelicans team. Because if the offense, that starting five, they're going to go out and they're going to get their buckets, especially a guy like Brandon Ingram. At times he's had his inefficient performances. You look at the playoffs last year. But he's going to try to find a way to get a bucket regardless. And maybe they're going to get that back up on the defensive end. But then that second unit comes in and you've got this great core three of defenders. The other team, while the starting five was in, they might have gotten a lot of buckets coming off of playing CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram. But what's going to happen then, this core three of defenders in Elfrid Payton, Herb Jones, and Trey Murphy, they're going to be able to come in and they're going to calm things down on that defensive end. They're going to be good defenders in their own right and kind of put a stop to the other team's momentum if they have to, as well as being solid offensive players in their own right. Elfrid Payton's been a great facilitator for this team so far. Trey Murphy as well, great shooter and great athleticism as well. There's a lot of upside with this bench. And even for Elfrid Payton in the starting lineup right now, where you can really trust him as a starter, there's a lot of upside there too. He is really redeeming his NBA career, and I think he's a great fit with the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm excited to watch them play this year. Dennis Schroder is having statistically his best season since his OKC Thunder days, back when he was almost the sixth man of the year for them. And that was a great lineup back in the day with him, CP3, SGA, 3 point guards, two of them who were quite small, even for the point guard position, and they're all able to come in and be valuable key contributors for that Thunder team just as a result of their defensive abilities, especially a guy like CP3 or Dennis Schroder. Despite their size, they wouldn't let that get in the way of what they could do on the defensive end. They hustled, and they got steals, and they hounded guys on the perimeter. And it was really a testament to the ability of those guys. And we're seeing that again with Dennis Schroder having the most opportunity he has really had, even on the offensive end, since those days over in Brooklyn now. This Brooklyn team, one thing about them is, despite, you look up and down the roster and there's not really any guys, besides maybe Cam Thomas and Dennis Schroder, that you can look at as the guys on the offensive end that you can really properly trust to run and facilitate this offense. And even Cam Thomas, obviously, he's not that gifted of a passer. He's a score-first guy, no doubt. On the offensive end, there's not really a lot of guys you can truly go to, and Schroder's been a bright spot for that. But focusing on the defensive end first, this team, if nothing else, has a lot of good role players, and especially a lot of good role players on that defensive end. Cam Thomas is once again kind of the outlier, but Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton, Dorian Finney-Smith, solid to really good perimeter Not just perimeter defenders on this team. Even Ben Simmons, who, he's always got his question marks. When he's playing, he is a good defender. We've got a lot of good defenders on this team, and you got in Dennis Schroder to that mix. And having all these good defensive players around him, that can enhance a defender's game. You look at a guy like Rudy Gobert. When he was on the Utah Jazz, he was consistently getting hounded on the defensive end because they had no one else that could really fill in for him. And Rudy Gobert was the guy that was just relied on to be the sole contributor for the Utah Jazz on the defensive end. And it worked at times. He was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year over there. He won his 4th over in Minnesota. In the playoffs, teams would just attack Rudy Gobert because they couldn't attack. They could take advantage of Rudy Gobert because no one else could be able to fill in for him. And Rudy Gobert, as good as he is, he's not going to be locked in 100%, be an elite defender on every single play. Rudy Gobert, because he was the only plus defender on that team. And although he was a very plus defender on that team, he got attacked consistently. No one could take any of the load off of Rudy Gobert. As a result, the Utah Jazz defensive performances, they consistently suffered in the playoffs under Rudy Gobert. And then he goes to Minnesota. And that first year wasn't that successful. The trade was really seen as a major loss for the Timberwolves because they gave away a lot and they get Rudy Gobert in return. But then he comes in and the team has pretty much the same record as the year before. They're just a play-in team, low seed, first-round exit. I think a lot of that really hinged on the fact that Cat was hurt. And Cat's obviously not a great defender in his own right, but he does have the size. And that Timberwolves team, as we saw in the past year, they are really trusting of that size. Having both Towns and Gobert out there to really put a lack of focus on Cat's flaws on the defensive end and just have 2 near 7-footers going out there on the defensive end. That's intimidating, to say the least. The main thing with the Timberwolves team was that they had a lot of perimeter defenders, and we saw that in the past year. They've got so many great point-of-attack guys. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, one of the most underrated defenders in the entire league. Jaden McDaniels, an elite defender. Anthony Edwards is very good in his own right, especially for what he has to do on the offensive end as well. Cat had the best defensive season of his career, and Rudy Gobert got back to being a Defensive Player of the Year player, and he won his 4th. They had a successful playoff run is the most important part here. They made it to the Western Conference Finals, only lost to a very impressive Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving-led Dallas Mavericks team. As great a defender as you can be in your own right as we see with Rudy Gobert, you are helped even more by having other guys around you that can help enhance your game and make your flaws as a defensive player shown even less. And you really don't have to go to those flaws. They really can't be attacked because you've got other guys on that defensive end who can make up for your mistakes. And it's that same case in Brooklyn with Dennis Schroder. In my opinion, he's a great perimeter defender, but with his 6'1" size, he's not going to be in the post. But you've got a great rim protector in Nicholas Claxton anyways, so you can make up for some of those flaws. I think Dennis Schroder is going to thrive in Brooklyn defensively, and we've already really seen that. But what he's also doing is honing in on the offensive end and having his best offensive season since his OKC days. That's kind of a result of him and Cam Thomas being the only guys that really truly have the green light on that team that they can really trust and go to on the offensive end. And Cam Thomas in his own right, he's been better this year, but at times in the past he has really struggled with his efficiency. When that becomes the case, Dennis Schroder's, as the veteran, he really becomes the guy to go to on the offensive end for that team, and he just scored 31 points on 10 for 18 shooting. So he's doing it efficiently, and that, as a large part, comes to his ability to get to the rim. We see it with point guards all the time that might focus on the three a little bit too much, and it hurts their proper efficiency, especially if they're taking a lot of contested threes, and those aren't necessarily falling. You look at Damian Lillard this season. Even his three-point percentage has gone down, and as a result, he always hasn't been the most efficient player just because of his shot diet anyways. It becomes even worse now when the three's not falling, but you look at a guy like SGA, who's able to get to the rim more, utilize that mid-range a lot more, and he's been a really efficient point guard for years now. Same thing with Jalen Brunson. And Dennis Schroder is another one of the archetype. He's more likely to drive than he is to take a three. Likely to try to get to that rim than he is to take a spot-up shot. As a result, it really helps his efficiency and makes him more effective of a scorer. And being more effective of a scorer and having a lot of green light over in Brooklyn, that is a recipe for success. Even Cam Thomas, in his lack of efficiency at times, he scored a lot for Brooklyn in the most recent years. You have a guy on top of that who can score as well, and he can do it efficiently. That's great. And Dennis Schroder's having one of the best years of his career over for Brooklyn. And this is a player who's always been super talented For Germany especially, he's really showed out in international competition, been one of the best players consistently in FIBA competitions, led him to World Cup victory. Dennis Schroder has consistently been great on the international stage, but the NBA at times has been lacking. He's never been an all-star, but he has been super underrated, and he's been great for the Brooklyn Nets this season. And Dennis Schroder, he may never be an all-star. That looks like it's going to be the most likely scenario, but he has all the talent in the world, and internationally he's always going to be known, but he has been one of the more underrated point guards in the NBA for the last decade. He was really good for the Atlanta Hawks. He started off his career kind of slow, but ever since then he's been really consistently good. And he catches some flack, like back for his playoff performances, back with the Los Angeles Lakers before they had Russell Westbrook. Games where he dropped a goose egg in the playoffs. But what is worth noting is that he wasn't necessarily the worst playoff player, he was just inconsistent. In that same playoff series, he had 3 20-point games, and that was more than Anthony Davis had, fun fact. I think he has caught a lot of undeserved criticism. Some of it is warranted, some of it is not. But at the end of the day, now he is a very good veteran player who has a good mind for the game, who is a very efficient offensive player that you can trust to go to and score consistently and facilitate for others. And he is a very good perimeter defender, and he is really showing that, putting it all on display for the Brooklyn Nets this season, all that Dennis Schroder has to offer as a very underrated point guard in the NBA, who's always going to be known on the international stage, but doesn't always get the opportunity in the league. But he's really shown out for the Brooklyn Nets this season, and it's great to see. The Philadelphia 76ers, a team that in recent years has been really good, have not had a lot of bright spots to start off this NBA season. There's been a lot of Joel Embiid controversy. Tyrese Maxey has been in and out of the lineup. But the one bright spot on this team to start the year, despite the abysmal record right now, is the rookie out of Duke, number 20, Jared McCain. He's been a really good scorer for them, and that's really the main point worth noting on his game right now. He hasn't developed other aspects of the game necessarily. At the end of the day, as a rookie, you are just expected to develop and become a better player over time. And so often, rookies aren't even that good of scorers. They might really struggle on that end of the floor, especially being efficient. But Jared McCain has been a really good scorer for them, and that just shows a high upside on that end of the floor. For 16 points a game, and he's had some good performances in there as well where he gets over 20. That a lot of seasoned veterans might even struggle to do at times, especially as they get in the latter stages of their career. And these are guys who have been in the league a long time, they know how it goes. But Jared McCain, he's just now getting his first reps, and he's doing it without the help of guys like Joel Embiid, even Tyrese Maxey, on some nights to take away the defensive attention from him. And he's still producing and being a very good player for the 76ers team that does not have a lot of that right now. This is someone who a lot of the criticism that he caught as a draft prospect, it was for factors that were outside of his on-the-court play. It was for, the painted nails and all the TikToks, and that's something we've not seen a successful NBA player really do, right? And it's a whole new thing. And you have to kind of gauge how to analyze it. But at the end of the day, as long as it doesn't become a distraction from what he's doing on the court, and he's still able to focus when he's on there playing for the Philadelphia 76ers on that home court, and I don't think it's too much of a problem. I don't think it should take away from what he's doing for the team. Doing for that team is looking like a real foundational piece for them, because even Paul George, who was expected to be in this big three with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, he's dealt with injuries to start the year too. And from what we've seen from Paul George in recent years, especially in the playoffs, is that his play has declined. He's not the same Indiana PG, early on Clippers PG. He is not that same player. At the end of the day, he can still be a very valuable NBA player, but he is not the same Paul George, and they do need someone to go out and step up on that team. With the absence of these guys, Tyrese Maxey has played 10 games, and he's been the most in the lineup out of all that big three of him, Joel, and PG. Tyrese Maxey has missed quite a bit of time to start off the year. So Jared McCain has really been the offensive focal point for this team quite often. He's been able to take those expectations and do something with them in a way that a lot of rookies can't. Especially with this draft class, it was seen as one that was really weak, especially in comparison to a lot of recent draft classes. You think of recent, really number one overall picks specifically, Zion Williamson, Anthony Edwards, Cade Cunningham, Paolo Banchero, Victor Wembanyama. They're guys who, Cade Cunningham obviously hasn't had the most success, being on a lacking Detroit Pistons teams who just haven't got a lot of wins. Zion Williamson has dealt with injuries, but all those guys are very talented. Anthony Edwards has been great as the first option for Minnesota. Wemby looks great. He's had a bit of a rough start to his second year, but the Spurs, they look like they're just developing his threes, and that's why he's been taking a lot more. Same thing they did with Jeremy Sohan in his point guard experiment last year. It's the same kind of thing for Wemby. It might hurt his individual production, but at the end of the day, they expect it to help his development in the long run, so I'm not worried about Wemby. Paul Banchero has been great for the Magic. He started off in the playoffs last year kind of inconsistent, but as the playoff series went on, he really grew into his own and developed, especially in that Pacers series, and became a really good piece for them, even in the playoffs, and a guy that you can really trust even in the postseason. There's been a lot of great rookies coming into the NBA in recent years, and even the number one pick in this draft class has been seen as more of a role player, a guy with not a high ceiling. But Jared McCain, he slips a little bit later into the draft. He doesn't look like it. He looks like one of the more polished rookies alongside a guy like Dalton Knecht, even Zach Edey, who was a heavily polarizing player. Been one of the best rookies in, albeit weak rookie draft class, but even in other years, this rookie season is comparable with some very good rookies of years past. Not every rookie is going to put up 20 and 10 like Wemby did last year. Anthony Edwards, for example, his rookie season, he scored 19, and this was a guy who was seen, and the Timberwolves kind of gave him the green light on the offensive end. They wanted a big three of him, Cat, and D'Lo, and obviously that has not worked out. Anthony Edwards is the only one there anymore, but they trusted Anthony Edwards from day one, and he only averaged 19 his rookie year, and that's very solid. Credit to him for even doing that. The rookies come in, and they're often not that fine-tuned on the offensive end, and Anthony Edwards was kind of an outlier in even scoring 19. That first half of the season, I believe he was averaging like 11. And so for Jared McCain to already be averaging 16, that's really impressive. He's been a super well-polished rookie, and a draft class that has been seen and perceived as a really weak one. He's been a true bright spot for that draft class, and he's been a bright spot for the Philadelphia 76ers as a whole. Based off what we're seeing for him right now, the sky is the limit for this guy, because Joel Embiid, he's dealt with so many injuries. Paul George is into the waning years of his career. Tyrese Maxey is still up and on the rise. But as a whole, Jared McCain, with his performances right now and the upside the precedent kind of brings, he really looks like a guy that you can truly build around on the Sixers team. The way he's been a bright spot so early on, not just early on in the season for the Sixers, a season that has gone really awry for them, but early on in his career as well as a rookie getting his first NBA reps. Coming in immediately and being a key contributor for this team, that's huge. That not even a lot of exciting rookies can really live up to, especially in the first half of their rookie year. And Jared McCain has already gone out and done that. So I think he can be, and is really showing that he can be a foundational piece for the Sixers team going into the future, especially when guys like Paul George, guys like Joel Embiid, there's a lot of distractions off the court with them. Times you can make the case that has affected their game. Ultimately, Joel Embiid, I think last year he was really the best version of himself, as he was coming off that year where he won the MVP and a lot of people said it wasn't deserved, but then the next year he comes back, he's even better, and a lot of people think he's going to win his first proper MVP, and he goes out, he gets injured, but even in the playoffs he really unlocked his game to levels that we hadn't seen. He was actually an effective player in the playoffs. There's distractions, there's some media controversy, shoving a reporter. There was a team held a meeting led by Tyrese Maxey, who was the one taking accountability, not the guy who's been the leader on the 76ers team for so long. So Jared McCain goes into a situation where there's already a lot of distractions, and there's of course outside noise about Jared McCain in his own right, the pain and nails for the TikToks, but it hasn't affected his game to this point, and that's not something you can always say, especially for some guys on this Philadelphia roster, who as talented as they are, sometimes these distractions have seeped into their on-the-court play. And so Jared McCain comes in, and he looks like a foundational piece for his team, a model of stability on a team that doesn't have a lot of them. And it's really just him and Tyrese Maxey right now. Having all that responsibility from day one as a rookie who was a part of a draft class that was already seen as relatively weak, and coming in and being an instant contributor, Jared McCain looks great for the 76ers. The sky really looks like the limit right now for him. I don't know what his ceiling necessarily as a true player is, but in terms of what he can do for this franchise, the sky is truly the limit for Jared McCain, and that's showing right now. The Los Angeles Lakers are a team that really has two major rookies that are truly in focus, and for really two different reasons. Bronny James, the son of LeBron, he's got expectations just as a result of that, but he really needs to go out and develop his game a little bit more. And Don't Connect has been really good for them, but people don't see him as having super high upside just as a result of his age. One other rookie that I've really taken note of on this team is Quincy Olivari, number 41. It's not necessarily just for his on-the-court play. He hasn't got a lot of opportunities on this team. At the end of the day, no matter how this roster is constructed, no matter the slow start to the season that D'Angelo Russell's had, no matter what the ceiling of Austin Reeves as a player is, and it really, production-wise, looks like he has hit his peak as a player and he's kind of plateaued at this point. No matter what, at the end of the day, on a team with LeBron James in the waning years of his career, still playing at a high level, and a team with Anthony Davis, who at the start of the season was looking like a true MVP candidate, and maybe the leading frontrunner for that, the team that's going to have championship expectations regardless, just because of that star-forward duo, and having a top 2 player in NBA history on your team. So Quincy Olivari, number 41, has not got a lot of opportunities for this team. But what we have been seeing from him is that this is a guy who just loves the game, and he really shows off the human element to it. So often in the NBA, we can get caught up in criticizing a player for their on-the-court performance and forget the human side of it, that at the end of the day, this is just an athlete who, yes, they've spent their entire lives working for this to make it to the NBA, but at the end of the day, they are still human. They're going to make mistakes, and they can be inconsistent at times. That's just part of the game. They're playing with super talented, elite, high-level players night in, night out that they weren't used to in high school, in college. And they're still human at the end of the day. And they're all going to respond to that differently. And it's the ones that can really take their game to the next level that become all-time greats. But not everyone is fit out to necessarily be an all-time great. And that's okay. And they're still human, and they're trying to build generational wealth for their family and play the game that they love. And they can catch a lot of criticism for their inconsistencies. And part of the time it is deserved for sure, but there's still a human element that can at times be lost. You look at Joel Embiid. He obviously had that recent controversy with shoving the reporter. The reporter made comments about Joel Embiid's family and him not honoring his late brother well. And you attack on family, you're taking away from the actual sports side of things, and you're moving on to something else entirely. And you really just forget the human element of it at the end of the day, that Joel Embiid is a guy who wasn't seen as a talented player for so long until he really started to make waves once he got into the NBA. This has been his livelihood, his life's work. That's the case with so many athletes, why they don't retire, why they take so long to retire. They can't admit that they're done because this is their life's work. They don't just want to walk away from that. It's the human element of things. And that's what's really stuck out to me with Quincy Olivari, is that human side of it, that real character that he's showing for this team. And he hasn't got a lot of opportunities to show that on the court. What he's really done off of it that's really made him a fan favorite of mine. He's really a proper fan of the game. From everything we've seen from him, he's been very excited to play alongside LeBron James. Got to meet up with Steph Curry when LA has played the Warriors, and he has taken in all these moments so gracefully and showed his gratitude for them. He might never be a high-level player. He is absolutely living out his dream right now to just make it into the NBA. And he's really just taking it all in and being so grateful for it and meeting up with stars and playing alongside one of the greatest players of all time in LeBron James. That's super cool for them, and the ceiling might not be super high as a player. His respect for the game is absolutely there. To just see how he's taking it all in, that's super cool to see. As a guy who's so clearly a fan of the game, who grew up watching LeBron James, because LeBron has been in the league since 2003. He was born in 2001. So from about 2 years old to now, he has not seen an NBA without LeBron James in it. And he's absolutely taking in the opportunity and learning from the greats. Just spending his time well with them and taking in, absorbing all that knowledge just because he has a deep respect for the game. And he grew up watching these guys and he's been a fan of them, what they've done for it. And it really shows off the human side. And Quincy Olivari may not ever be a great NBA player, but his story is one to be admired from just the way that he has taken it all in, all this gratitude from living out his dream, and he's absolutely making the most of it, even as a guy who struggles to get minutes at times as a rookie. Absolutely fine, by the way. No matter what his ceiling is as a player, number 41 is absolutely taking it all in and soaking up his dream right now that he's worked his whole life towards, just being in the NBA, playing alongside someone that he grew up watching, and meeting up with guys who revolutionized the game in Steph Curry And it's really just showing the human side of things, and that's something that so often does not get focused on, especially as reporting more and more so loses sight of the storytelling aspect of things. I think Quincy Olivari has been a great story to start the year, and we're not projecting his ceiling as a player, we're just pointing out what he's been doing off the court has been really, really cool, and he's getting so many opportunities to live out his dream alongside a top 2 player in NBA history, someone that he grew up watching and likely idolized. Brings back that human element of it that is so often lost, especially in the modern NBA, especially with social media where players will catch criticism for anything. We can at times need to take a step back and appreciate the beautiful game that the NBA is. Appreciate the players behind the on-the-court play. They truly are off the court, who they are as humans, their proper character, and what they do and how they soak it all in and appreciate the moments and absorb the knowledge from the players that they are playing alongside. And that is absolutely what Quincy Olivari is doing, and he has become one of my favorite rookies just for that reason. I wish all the success for him. With this knowledge, even as a guy who isn't perceived as having necessarily a high ceiling, just absorbing all this knowledge, playing alongside LeBron James. Obviously, rookies have had a tendency in the past to not play well alongside LeBron, but to gain that knowledge from him can be huge for your long-term outlook as a player in developing your basketball IQ and experience beyond your years in the actual NBA. I think that could actually be a huge positive for Quincy Olivari, the way he's going about things right now. It's just a great story to see the real human aspect of things in a league that has so often now lost that side of things, lost that personal element to it. We're seeing it once again with Quincy Olivari. He's just soaking in his dream, all the opportunities that he's getting, all the knowledge that he's gaining. And he looks to make the most of it. This is his dream, and he's making all the money in the world. But that's not the most important thing to him right now. And it's just great to see the human side of things once again in a sport and just overall country that's kind of lost that. It's really just been exemplified for number 41 on the Lakers, maybe the least talked about rookie on that team, but one who has just really shown his passion for the game, excited he is to be in the NBA, and the knowledge that he's ready to learn. And that really just projects high for his basketball IQ in the future, just as a result for being willing to take in all this knowledge. And so many guys can be overconfident and believe that they know everything just immediately coming into the league, and they don't. But number 41 is just quite the opposite of that, and it's great to see. I wish him all the best in the future, and he has become one of my favorite rookies and one of my favorite Lakers players, even though he might get limited time. Number 41 is definitely one to watch in the future, and even right now, just for what he's doing and the way that he's just taken all in with so much gratitude and really just showed that personal side of things when we can so often lose track of it. And that is all for today's episode of State of the Association. Thank you for listening. This has been one of my favorite episodes. We had 4 segments today. All were about 8 minutes long. You know, I've been able to just progress as we get further on to really tell a story alongside the reporting, alongside the key, main headline, the reason that we're even talking about it in the first place. I've been able to really develop, come into my own, and obviously there's still a lot of progress to be had. But this has been one of my favorite episodes, no doubt. If not my absolute favorite. And we're just trying to get better each and every time. And it's been a real fun one. Thank you for tuning in. This has been State of the Association. We'll be back tomorrow for a special Thanksgiving episode. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. Thank you for listening.